Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. We here at the corner have decided to look into a question that has long intrigued many of us Tolkien fans the world over for decades. The question of if Tolkien had wanted to make a third Dark Lord to follow after Morgoth and Sauron, who could it have been? To answer this excellent question, we're going to examine a duo of texts that have rarely been linked together in order to try to see if maybe there is a link between them, or one that could have been had Tolkien lived a bit longer, or somehow decided to write The New Shadow, the intended sequel to Lord of the Rings. This is but a semi-theory, semi-just possible outcome that could have been, where we're examining whether or not Tolkien left a possible backdoor to a sequel to Lord of the Rings open, just in case. To do this, we're going to examine The New Shadow, a couple of Tolkien's letters, and the garbled text that is known as Gilfonen's Tale. Gilfonen's Tale can be found in the Book of Lost Tales, Book 1 by J.R.R. Tolkien, whereas The New Shadow can be found in the History of Middle-earth. So without further ado, let's get into the actual meat of this video.
It is a long-known public secret that at one time in his life, Tolkien had intended to write a sequel to the Lord of the Rings. This text was dubbed The New Shadow, and details of the text can be found in one of Tolkien's letters, number 256 to be exact, in which Tolkien says, "I did begin a story placed about 100 years after the downfall, but it has proved both sinister and depressing. Since we are dealing with men, it is inevitable that we should be concerned with the most regrettable feature of their nature, their quick satiety with good, so that the people of Gondor in times of peace, justice, and prosperity would become discontented and restless, while the dynasts descended from Aragorn would become just kings and governors, like Denethor or worse. I found that even as early, there was an outcrop of revolutionary plots about a center of secret Satanistic religion, while Gondorian boys were playing at being orcs and going around doing damage. I could have written a thriller about the plot and its discovery and overthrow, but it would have been just that, not worth doing. Obviously, this text would have been a bleaker one than Lord of the Rings, and what is even more obvious is that Tolkien lost interest in it. What is more is that the great professor did, however, begin the tale, but stopped after 13 pages. Many have argued over the years that Tolkien closed all possible avenues for future Dark Lords, ending his story with the fall of Saruman, the only possible heir to Sauron. This is where Gilfonen's Tale comes in. The text in question can be found in the first book of the Lost Tales.
In the text, there is reference to the fall of Autumno and how one of Melkor's servants escaped capture from the grasp of the Valar. This servant being named Fukil, or Fangli, or as he is named in later versions of the text, Fankil. In the text of Gilfonen, Fankil is noteworthy for going amongst men, corrupting a great many into worshipping Melkor and him. What is more is that there is a great battle between those corrupted and those who cling to the Fae, those who are of the folk of Ermin, one of the first men. The Battle of Pallasor results in men being driven west, leaving behind them only darkness, as Beor later tells Finrod Felagund. This war saw humans manipulated into worshipping Fankil and Melko, and reduced to a bestial state, so that likely a portion of those people became the Easterlings. As to the rest of the men, those of Ermin were the ancestors of Beor and his tribesmen. What is telling about this tale is that at the start, it was not Sauron who was intended to be the number 2 man to Melkor, but Fankil. What is more is how similar Sauron and Fankil comported themselves in that they used trickery to turn people against one another. And then there is how Sauron managed to convince the Númenóreans into worshipping Melkor, just as Fankil succeeded in persuading some of the first humans to do so shortly after their awakening. What is more is that if one considers parts of the history of Middle-earth and extra stories to be part of Tolkien's canon, this could mean that Gilfonen's Tale can be looked at as a possible canon story. And while canon is a slippery thing when it comes to the legendarium, it is worth exploring for this particular idea, namely the possibility of the third Dark Lord being equal to the second one, and that he is still alive in the far east of Arda. That he was never brought down may mean he still rules, still lives to threaten all that the Valar have built. If we consider then the text of the New Shadow, could it be that had it been continued, might Thankill have been a possible candidate for a third Dark Lord? He could have laid claim to the empty title and throne of Morgoth and Sauron. It is highly possible that when he began a New Shadow, a new set of villains would have been used. Yet it is equally possible that maybe he didn't forget about this ancient villain of Arda. Though I kind of lean towards him temporarily forgetting, but then when you look over his notes, if he had, he would have included Thankill, possibly. Because if you look into the text of the New Shadow, there is talk of the smell of old evil returning to Middle-earth, with Borlas, one of the leads, talking about finding it this way. Is it possible that this old evil could be Thankill, returning to the west to complete his old master's work? While I'm sure this explanation might not please everyone, I myself find the possibility of this hanging plot thread, this left hand of Melko, so to speak, being at last laid to rest, rather exciting. Thankill is that were he to lay claim to the title of Dark Lord, this would have in effect made him the New Shadow, just as Sauron became known as the Shadow only after the fall of Morgoth. While it is without a doubt that the New Shadow could not have surpassed the glory and beauty of Lord of the Rings, or even that of the Silmarillion, I think any tale told by the professor would have still been exciting, especially if he were to further hammer out the details of the story of Gilfonen and maybe tie the New Shadow back to Melkor in some capacity. He stated that he felt that the story would have ended up being a lower fantasy story. It would have been a thriller, but I think it could still have been a pretty high fantasy story if Thankill had made his appearance in yet another desperate battle against the Dark Lord. And maybe a possible redemption story for Gondor, which has forgotten some of the lessons learnt during Aragorn's and Frodo's time. It is highly possible that Tolkien would have created a new villain, as stated. Therefore, this is but mere speculation, but the possibility of an ancient evil and a new shadow both being tied together could have led to exciting possibilities in terms of storytelling. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, feel free to smash that like and that subscribe button like you're Eowyn hewing down the Witch King of Angmar.